Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here with you, and the Minnesota Vikings are at the bye week. So I figured what we would do is create a little series that takes a look in depth at some of the player performances that have stood out, particularly by the numbers. So keep an eye out for other videos as well, looking at individual players at the bye. I wanted to start out the series though with TJ Hockenson because at the beginning of the year, TJ Hockenson had a pretty rough start. Even by his own admission, there were a few drops that were quite frustrating, including a drop at the end of the game against the Chargers that cost the Vikings a touchdown that would have won them a game. And instead, it bounced off his hands, ended up as an interception. The Vikings got a tough loss there, and a lot of fingers correctly at the time pointed at Hockenson. And when he got off to that tough start, there were questions of, wait, did they sign the wrong guy to a big contract? Or maybe he should have participated in preseason more often. I don't really buy that, considering he came here last year mid-season and played really well right off of another team. So I think that it was more of randomness and a little bit of bad luck for Hockenson at the beginning of the year. But since that time, he has become one of the Vikings' most valuable players, and arguably, since the beginning of the year, the best tight end in the entire NFL as a receiver. And we'll look at what some of the other numbers say about Hawkinson's performance. But this year, Hockenson has elevated himself even beyond what he was for the Vikings last year. And a major part of that has been that Justin Jefferson was out for 7 games. So let's take a look at some of the numbers to start out. So here is from Pro Football Focus, TJ Hockenson and how he stacks up with the other 6 best tight ends in the league. And this is out of the most targeted tight ends. So we removed the tiny sample size. Somebody has one good game or a handful of targets as tight end number 2 or whatever. This is his peers and how he matches up by the grades against the other best tight ends in the league. And as you can see, by receiving grade, Travis Kelce is number 1, not just because he's Taylor Swift's boyfriend, but he's very good at football. In fact, one of the best to ever play, and Patrick Mahomes' main target with a lot of struggling receivers in Kansas City. But still, TJ Hockenson has been targeted 19 more times and has 10 more catches than Travis Kelce so far this year. And despite the drops, is considered to be the 3rd best pass catching tight end, only behind Kelce and George Kittle. And those guys are the cream of the crop, the premier players at their position. As far as overall PFF grade, Mark Andrews is a shade higher, but that still puts TJ Hockenson in elite company. So last year he graded pretty well, but this year he's taken a major step forward. And when you look at those targets compared to the other tight ends, even the ones that have played 12 games like McBride and like Kmet, you're talking about almost double the amount of targets from those guys. That's not often you see at this point in the year, 80 receptions from a tight end, but that's what TJ Hockenson has done. And even though some of it is volume receptions, we'll look at that in a minute. His yards per catch, only 1 yard behind Travis Kelce, not on the same level as far as going downfield as George Kittle, but right in the mix with the other top tight ends. Now, as far as where they've been throwing the ball, and this is again from Pro Football Focus, where they've been throwing the ball to TJ Hockenson, something really stands out to me because each area of the field is graded by PFF that he has been extremely, extremely good on underneath stuff over the middle of the field. 33 for 39 quarterbacks throwing him the ball in between 0 and 10 yards for 312 yards, a touchdown, and a 97 quarterback rating. The only interception was that play against the Chargers. But also something stuck out too, that he's been going down the field with 11 catches between 10 and 20 yards. And that was something that I wasn't sure we were going to see a whole lot from TJ Hockenson. In Detroit, he had more have been all underneath, yards after catch, lots of choice routes as we've seen from him. But since Jefferson has been out, he has been more of a deep threat. And you could see the 2 receptions, 1 for a touchdown, 50 yards when the ball is traveling over 20 yards to TJ Hockenson. And this is the area I think he's been used more and has shown more of his value. It doesn't mean that every area of the field has been successful over the middle and the intermediate, just 4 for 12 passing in his way with 2 touchdowns, but every other part of the field, Hockenson has been very effective. And when we look at some additional numbers from TJ Hockenson this year, he is second in the percentage of snaps where he is playing in line as a tight end. So this was something that we talked about in the beginning of the season is where is TJ Hockenson going to line up? Is he going to be outside? Is he going to be more in the slot? And he's actually played more of a traditional tight end role, which I think makes some of the receiving more impressive because you can have the other receivers lined up at their positions and Hockenson in if you need him to block. But most of the time, of course, he's going out. But from that spot, getting more matchups against linebackers, finding more space in the middle of the field, it's nice to have that other element of it. And 48% of the time, he's lining up somewhere else. But you can see how the league is really turned into move tight ends, that tight ends are lining up all over the field. And to have someone coming from a traditional role and having success, I think is a bit of an edge, or at least it's notable that he's been used in more of a traditional way than we would have expected. He also leads all tight ends in first downs. That one doesn't really require a big explanation, but getting past the sticks for a tight end is pretty important when a lot of the passes are underneath to those guys. And oftentimes when you look at the numbers for tight ends that have a lot of receptions, it's 5, 6, 7 yards. And on third down, they're just the check down and so forth. But that hasn't really been the case with TJ Hockenson, although he was a half a yard short from converting a fourth down against the Chicago Bears. Vikings quarterbacks have nearly 109 quarterback rating when they're targeting TJ Hockenson. Again, this is a stat where most tight ends have high quarterback ratings when targeted. So it's not exactly like a receiver because there's fewer balls that are going downfield, fewer interceptions, but still that is very effective when you're completing almost 80% of the passes his way and at the volume that you're using TJ Hockenson. And when it comes to his run blocking, he has never been really known for that, and he's been dealing with injuries. Yet, according to PFF, he's been average. And an average TJ Hockenson at run blocking is a pretty good TJ Hockenson. And by the way, when the Vikings went out and paid Josh Oliver, there were some questions. Is this a good idea to invest money in a number 2 tight end? Well, Oliver has not been that big of a threat in the passing game. He is ranked number 1 in run blocking. So he has done the job that he was brought here to do. And TJ Hockenson, even though he has turned it around, is still second in drops and 14th of 15 tight ends with at least 50 targets on contested catches. And if there's anything that separates someone like Travis Kelce from TJ Hockenson or George Kittle, but especially Kelce, it's that ability to go up and get it when there is a contested catch. And there were a few of those against the Bears on Monday Night Football and numerous ones that we've seen throughout the year where Hockenson is not necessarily the softest hands receiver. It's not Tony Gonzalez. He mostly is a guy that gets open more than your average receiver and can move once he gets the ball in his hands. So overall, TJ Hockenson has had a very, very good season. And when they needed him the most, he has been there to help them go 5-2 during the absence of Justin Jefferson. So there's one Viking player in the spotlight here at the bye week. We will have more with some of the data and numbers that we're going to look to as well. So keep an eye out for those on the YouTube page, and we'll catch you next time.